They erased me from the family photo albums, from the trust fund, from the legacy. 10 years ago, I was framed for stealing nearly $200,000 from my family's foundation. I took the fall, stayed silent, vanished. But what they didn't know was that I didn't disappear. I evolved. And now I'm coming back, not for revenge, but for something far more dangerous. The truth. They say every Southern family has its secrets. Ours just happened to make the front page of the Post and Courier. My name is Grace Whitmore, and for the better part of a decade, I was the daughter my family tried to erase. To the outside world, the Whitmores were Charleston royalty generations of landowners, donors, patrons of the arts. We hosted galas, funded libraries, and attended church every Sunday in the same pew my grandfather carved with his initials in 1946. But behind the pearls and propriety, there was a silent rule: protect the family name at all costs. I learned that the hard way. I was 24 when it all unraveled. At the time, I was managing the Whitmore Foundation, the family's philanthropic arm, focusing on education grants and local literacy programs. It was more than a job. It was my identity, my purpose, my way of proving I wasn't just a socialite in heels. The foundation had a $6.2 million endowment. I modernized its operations, digitized our grant processes, and partnered with several nonprofits for financial transparency initiatives. My goal was to bring rigor to what had long been a passion project for my mother. But when the scandal broke, none of that mattered. The audit flagged a discrepancy, $187,000 missing, from one of our scholarship subfunds. The money had been rerouted through a shell account. The trail on paper led to me. The account was opened under my login credentials. The access logs matched my work hours. The funds disappeared during a weekend I was supposedly working late. The police arrived at my office before I had time to process the numbers. I remember the handcuffs, the flash of cameras, the look on my father's face, half grief, half disgust, as I was led down the marble steps of our family building. Not one word from him. That night, the front page headline read, "Whitmore Heiress," accused of embezzling family charity funds. But what they never printed was this: I didn't do it. The truth. My younger brother Noah, then a 19-year-old college sophomore with a gambling addiction and a God complex, had been siphoning funds from the foundation for nearly a year. He'd lost control after getting in deep with a private crypto syndicate, run by some Yale dropout turned algorithmic trader in Miami. When the losses caught up to him, he panicked, and instead of confessing, he confessed to me. He was crying when he told me, trembling, desperate. It was the first time in my life I saw him look like a child instead of the golden son. I messed up, he said. If this gets out, Dad will disown me. Mom will fall apart. He asked me to help him cover it up, just until he could make it right, just until he could win it back. I didn't agree. I told him he needed to come clean. But that night, my mother came to my apartment, red-eyed, barefoot, holding the pearls she never took off in one hand and a glass of whiskey in the other. She didn't ask me to cover for Noah. She begged, "Grace, please. Your brother is young. This would ruin him. You're the strong one. You can survive a little scandal." I remember laughing. I thought she was joking. But her eyes were wet with something I now recognize wasn't sorrow, it was calculation. The next morning, the foundation's servers crashed. When they were restored, the audit trail had shifted. My login, my fingerprint, my digital signature. I knew what it looked like. I also knew who had the technical ability to pull off a cover-up that sophisticated Noah had minored in cybersecurity. And I, like an idiot, had helped him with internship applications just the summer before praising his clever code snippets. I never stood a chance. Within a week, I was out of a job, out of the family will, and out of Charleston. My father released a statement to the press. While the allegations are deeply painful, the Whitmore family upholds the law and the principles of accountability. We do not condone wrongdoing, even within our own bloodline. Not once did they say my name, just the accused. I didn't fight the charges. The DA offered a deal: no jail time, just a permanent bar from managing nonprofit funds and a public apology. I took it, not because I was guilty, but because the alternative was dragging the family name through trial and discovery. That was the price of silence. That was the debt they made me pay. But here's the part they never saw coming. I didn't break. I vanished. I moved west, changed my name, took a series of low-level jobs: office admin, hotel night clerk, janitorial staff at a community college, anything that paid cash and kept me out of the spotlight. At night, I studied data security, network forensics, digital trails. If my brother could frame me using the system, I would master the system. Not to get revenge, to make sure no one ever did to another woman what they did to me. They called it a fall from grace, but they never asked what I was falling into, and 10 years later, they're about to find out. They say time heals. That's a lie people tell themselves so they can sleep. Time doesn't heal, it buries. And if you're not careful, it buries you with it. For 10 years, I lived under another name, another face, another truth. Out west, no one knew the Whitmores. In Albuquerque, I was just Anna Blake, the woman with quiet eyes, and a resume full of clerical work and blank spaces. No one asked where I'd come from. No one asked why someone with a finance degree from Vanderbilt was folding laundry at a motel off Route 66. I think they could tell I didn't want to be found. I worked small jobs, ones that paid under the table or didn't care much about background checks. I didn't spend, I didn't talk. I kept to myself, but I watched. I studied every detail of digital manipulation I could access. I audited free courses on blockchain verification, packet sniffing, and forensic accounting. I learned to read logs the way some people read sheet music, knowing where the melody breaks, where the lie begins. And at night, in a $600 a month one-bedroom with a leaking faucet and broken blinds, I built something. A system. Not for revenge. Not yet. It started with a single Reddit thread. A woman whose husband faked documents to win custody. She had the truth, but no way to prove it. I knew her pain. I knew the panic of knowing something was false and being unable to make anyone believe you. I helped her. Quietly. Anonymously. I showed her how to extract metadata, how to trace file versions, how to prove the original he'd submitted wasn't so original after all. She won her case. She sent me a thank you. Just one line: "You gave me back my voice." That line became the name of the thing I built next: Second Truth. A digital community. Half forum, half resource hub. Built for women who had been erased by courts, by employers, by exes, by families who'd rather lose a daughter than admit a son could lie. I didn't use my name. I didn't need to. The work spoke loud enough. Over time, Second Truth grew, from 5 women to 50 to 5,000. Stories poured in: suspicious financial records, forged emails, altered contracts, manipulated footage. I taught them how to fight with proof, how to spot tampering, how to preserve a chain of custody, how to document abuse not with tears but with timestamps. I wasn't a vigilante, I was a teacher, and I never once broke cover. Until year 7. That's when I got a message from a woman named Camille, working at a nonprofit in Florida. Her story was almost too familiar. She was being accused of embezzling $90,000 from a donor fund. She had no idea how. Her access logs showed activity she didn't recognize, all tied to her account. The board was preparing to fire her. I dug into her case, and that's when the past reached out and tapped me on the shoulder. The hacker had used a log-splitting technique I'd seen before, identical to what had been used on my case. Same obfuscation patterns, same command string, a signature most would miss, but I didn't, because I'd lived it. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I traced the IP back, not to Charleston directly, but to a shell domain routed through a firm, registered in Beaufort County. That's home. My hands didn't shake, not anymore. I knew then this wasn't coincidence. It was habit. Whoever had covered up Noah's mess, him or someone he'd hired, had done it again. On someone else, a stranger, another woman easy to frame, easy to silence. But this time, it wasn't going to end the same. I helped Camille prove her innocence. I packaged the forensic evidence, connected her with a legal contact through Second Truth, and submitted the findings to her board. She kept her job. The man behind the fraud was quietly dismissed. But that case lit a fire I'd spent a decade burying, because suddenly it wasn't just about what happened to me. It was about the pattern, about how powerful families protect sons by sacrificing daughters, about how truth isn't something you find, it's something you build, one verified file at a time. That was the moment I stopped hiding, not in a loud way, no grand announcement, but I registered a business. I filed paperwork in my real name. I began turning Second Truth from a shadow community into a formal organization with protocols, legal partners, and infrastructure. I even hired a freelance designer to create a logo, a shattered mirror, with a woman's eye staring out from the center. Some truths don't break when you drop them. They sharpen. So I started sharpening mine. And while Charleston went on sipping wine and attending garden parties, I was quietly planning my return, not as the disgraced daughter, but as something they never saw coming. Some people build empires from glass. Mine was built from silence. Second Truth became more than a platform. It became a refuge, a network, a sanctuary for women who'd been digitally erased and legally outmaneuvered. I didn't post often. I didn't need to. My fingerprints were in every encrypted chat, every code patch, every line of server logic optimized to protect anonymity. I designed the database infrastructure myself, triple redundant, decentralized. No single point of failure. We kept no personal data. Our hosting rotated dynamically through a blockchain-based mesh system. To most people, Second Truth was a whisper. To those who needed it, it was a lifeline. By year 9, we'd helped exonerate 12 women from false accusations, financial misconduct, custody sabotage. Even one woman who was nearly deported, based on falsified immigration records. Our method was always the same: digital forensics, metadata reconstruction expert, affidavits, chain of custody analysis. We'd even created proprietary AI-assisted tools to detect manipulated documents. It wasn't glamorous, it was meticulous, and it worked. Then came the invite. I remember staring at the email like it had teeth. Subject panel invite: Women in Digital Justice. Dear Ms. Blake, your work through Second Truth has drawn national interest. We're curating a panel for the upcoming Women's Digital Justice Conference in Charleston, South Carolina. Charleston. The word hit like a nail through the ribs. The city that had buried me now wanted to hear my voice without even knowing it was mine. I didn't reply right away. For 2 days, I sat with it, walked with it, slept beside it like an old betrayal that had come home wearing a different name. But on the 3rd morning, I opened my laptop and typed 2 words: I'm in. I didn't tell my team the full truth, only that we'd be attending our first public event. I registered under the name A. Grace Layton, a legal pseudonym I'd adopted when incorporating the foundation 6 months earlier. The team was excited, nervous, proud. They had no idea what Charleston meant to me, and I wasn't ready to tell them. Not yet. We booked a booth, a quiet corner space at the back of the main exhibit hall. Nothing flashy, just a matte black table, a printed banner with our logo, and a looping screen that displayed anonymous testimonials. They believed me when no one else would. Because of Second Truth, I have my child back. They didn't just protect my evidence, they protected my name. The conference opened on a rainy Friday. Charleston hadn't changed much. The moss still hung from the oaks like secrets too old to fall. I stayed in a small hotel far from downtown. No risk of running into anyone, or so I thought. Saturday morning, a young woman approached our booth, mid-20s, confident, wearing a staff badge. She smiled and said, "You must be Grace. I'm Taylor. We've been watching Second Truth for over a year. You're kind of a legend." I gave the practice smile, the one that didn't reveal too much. She leaned closer. "Listen, we added you to the speaker list. There's a panel tomorrow morning: ethics, evidence, and the digital war on women. Would you consider joining?" I hesitated. Every instinct said no, but then I remembered Camille and the 12 other women, and the thousands more reading in silence, still afraid to speak. "Yes," I said. "I'll do it." Sunday arrived like a slow, heavy tide. The panel was held in a ballroom at the Hightower, Charleston's oldest hotel. I hadn't set foot in it since I was 19, attending a debutante reception my mother had organized. Now I walked through its glass doors, not as a daughter of the Whitmores, but as a ghost with purpose. The room was full: cameras, notepads, reporters, and at the center table, someone I didn't expect. Noah, 10 years older, sharper suit, political smile, sitting beside a woman I vaguely recognized from Charleston social columns. His wife, apparently. He was here as a keynote guest, representing the Whitmore Foundation's renewed commitment to digital equity. The irony was surgical. I sat down at the far end of the table, trying to steady my breath. My heart was a drum, but my hands didn't shake. The moderator introduced me as Grace Layton, founder of Second Truth. I leaned into the mic, and for the first time in 10 years, I spoke aloud about what happens when evidence is a weapon, when systems are designed to disbelieve women, when digital paper trails are manipulated by those who know how to hide in the code. I never said my name. I never said Noah's, but the details I shared, the pattern, the technique. Noah recognized it. I saw his face blanch, his posture stiffen, his fingers curl into the tablecloth. He knew. He remembered exactly how it had been done, and he knew I was the only other person alive who'd seen it. But I didn't look at him. I looked at the audience, and I said, the truth doesn't vanish just because powerful people want it to. It waits, it watches, and sometimes it returns with receipts. When the panel ended, people stood, not clapping, just standing, silent, moved. Noah never approached me. He didn't have to. I'd already seen what I came to see, and I wasn't done, not even close. The invitation came in a thick white envelope with gold trim. Embossed, elegant, exactly what you'd expect from the Whitmore family. I found it in my mailbox 2 weeks after the Charleston conference, tucked between a utilities bill and a flyer for lawn care. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. You are cordially invited to the 150th anniversary of the Whitmore legacy, hosted at Whitmore Estate, Charleston, South Carolina. Black tie, no press, family only, family. That word tasted like rust. At first I thought it was a mistake, or worse, a trap. But then I noticed the signature at the bottom, Noah Whitmore, my brother. There was no note, no apology, just the seal of the family crest stamped in wax, as if that somehow meant something again. For days I didn't respond. And then I did. I RSVP'd. I said I'd attend, not out of curiosity, but because every lie eventually deserves a room full of witnesses. The night of the gala, the Whitmore estate was exactly as I remembered, grand, sprawling, spotless. A plantation turned manor with too many chandeliers and too few truths. I wore black, a fitted dress, simple lines, no frills. The opposite of the debutante ball gown I once wore in this very hall the night my mother whispered, "Smile like nothing is wrong." This time I didn't smile. The foyer was full of people I once called cousins, aunts, neighbors. No one recognized me 10 years, and a new last name will do that. Or maybe they just never really saw me to begin with. The reception was held under a glass canopy strung with fairy lights. A stage had been built, chairs arranged. Champagne flowed like they'd already forgotten who they buried 10 years ago. And then Noah took the stage. He looked the part, tailored Tuck's charming grin, his hand resting lightly on his wife's back. A rising political star, now running for state office on a platform of family values and community investment. He spoke about legacy, about the strength of bloodlines and the importance of unity. He didn't say my name, but when he scanned the crowd, he saw me. And for one heartbeat, just one, his eyes froze. He knew, he just didn't know what I was about to do. Because I wasn't the only speaker tonight. The event had a reflection segment. Noah's idea, apparently. A way to honor the Whitmore values through community impact. One of his staffers had extended an open call for submissions. Second Truth had submitted a name, Grace Layton, and she'd been accepted. I stepped onto the stage like I'd done it 1,000 times. The lights were warm, the microphone buzzed, and the silence was cathedral level. I took a breath, then I spoke. I want to tell you a story, I began, my voice steady. About a girl who once believed her family would protect her, who thought loyalty was sacred. That truth mattered more than reputation. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. As I spoke, faces began to shift. Heads turned. My mother's hand clutched her pearls. My father stared unmoving, like he was watching a ghost deliver its own eulogy. I told them how the girl took the fall for a crime she didn't commit. How she was erased, framed, cast out to save a brother's career. How her silence bought their comfort. Their peace, their legacy. Noah was pale. I kept going, but the thing about exile, I said, is that it teaches you who you are without their script. It teaches you how to survive with no applause, and sometimes, how to build something stronger in the quiet. I spoke of Second Truth, what we'd done, who we'd helped, how silence can be armor until it becomes a weapon. And then I said, I stand here tonight, not as the daughter you cast aside, but as the voice you tried to erase. A murmur swept the room. Recognition. Shock. A gasp from someone in the second row. And then from the back of the crowd, clapping. One woman, then another, until it spread like fire through dry fields. Applause not polite, not obligatory, but visceral. I stepped down from the stage, heart pounding, knees steady. My mother reached for me as I passed. Grace, she whispered. You shouldn't have. I didn't stop. Noah followed me into the hallway moments later. You blindsided me, he hissed. No, I said, turning to face him. You did that 10 years ago. He glanced around, nervous. You could have destroyed us. I didn't, I said. Yet. He stared, and I added calmly. But understand this, Noah. Second Truth isn't just a platform. It's a record, a history, a weapon. And I kept the files. Every one of them. He swallowed. Hard. I leaned in close. I came here to tell my truth, not to ruin you. But if you ever think about doing to someone else what you did to me, I smiled. I will. And then I walked away. Not to applause, but to peace. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't hiding. I was home, but on my terms. 3 days after the gala, a letter arrived at my doorstep. Handwritten, no return address. I recognized the looping cursive, immediately my mother's. It wasn't long. You stood in that room with more dignity than any of us deserved. I watched you take your name back. We made you a scapegoat. I won't ask for forgiveness, but I wanted you to know. We were wrong, and you were always right. I folded it gently, placed it in a drawer next to the only photo I still kept from the old life, me at 17, arms around Noah, both of us smiling like we believed in forever. I didn't respond, not out of spite, but because sometimes the silence you leave behind is louder than the words they never said. In the weeks that followed, Second Truth received more attention than we'd ever sought. Not viral, just visible. A quiet groundswell. Donations increased. So did case requests. One story made national news, a public school principal framed by a board member trying to force early retirement. Her voice had been buried under doctored emails and leaked memos. We helped her prove the tampering. She kept her job. She sent me a note that read, "You didn't just help me win. You helped me believe I deserved to." That line stayed with me longer than the headlines. Noah, for his part, never reached out again. But I heard through the Charleston grapevine that his political campaign had postponed indefinitely. Rumors of internal ethics concerns. Nothing provable. Just enough smoke to burn ambition. He's still out there existing in a world that rewards image over integrity. But I stopped watching, because revenge when done right doesn't need surveillance. It needs release. I bought a small home on a bluff overlooking the water, quiet, weathered mine. No marble floors, no chandeliers, but peace plenty. Second Truth continued to grow. We formalized our nonprofit status, partnered with 2 pro bono legal clinics, and created a digital literacy curriculum for women in underserved communities. I taught a course at a local college once a week, not for pay, just to see the moment when a woman who thought she was helpless realizes she's not. We launched a campaign called Proof is Power, equipping women with tools to protect their data, their digital identities, their voices. It reached over 100,000 people in its first year. And then one day I got a call from Camille, the woman whose case had started all this. She was launching her own platform, Local Modest, focused on tech training for women re-entering the workforce after abusive relationships. She said, "You saved my life, Grace. I want to pay it forward. Any chance you'd mentor me?" I said yes. Of course I said yes. Because that's what happens when you reclaim your story. You stop guarding it and start giving it. At the first annual Second Truth Conference, a modest gathering of survivors advocates, coders, lawyers, and quiet warriors, I stepped on stage in a plain navy dress. No lights, no press. Just 200 people who knew the cost of silence. I told them the truth. I was erased once, not by accident, not by mistake, but by design. And for years I thought that meant I had to disappear forever. But I was wrong. The truth doesn't need permission. It just needs a witness. So be one. For yourself, for each other, for every woman still waiting to be believed. There were no ovations, just stillness. And that strange kind of reverence that doesn't need clapping to mean everything. Afterwards, a teenage girl approached me, shy, eyes wide. She whispered, "My aunt's going through something. She thinks no one will believe her." I looked her in the eye and said, "Then we'll believe her first." And just like that, it was no longer about me. It was never supposed to be. It was about the woman who thought she was alone, the one staring at a login screen wondering if it's worth the risk, the one sitting in a courtroom with trembling hands, the one who erased every digital trace of her existence just to survive. Until someone whispered, "We see you." Years ago, I was a girl who fell. Tonight, I'm a woman who rose, not by burning down the old house, but by building something stronger from its ashes. My name is Grace Whitmore. I was the daughter they tried to forget, but I remember everything, and now, the world does too. Some scars aren't shameful, they're maps, and sometimes the road back to yourself is the longest one worth walking. They thought they'd buried me, but I learned something in the dark. When you stop chasing approval, you start finding purpose, and sometimes the best revenge is not proving them wrong. It's proving yourself right. If this story spoke to you, if you believe in quiet strength, redemption, and truth that refuses to stay buried, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment. Share your story. Because somewhere someone needs to know they're not alone. And their voice still matters. Always has.